Hi, this is going to be my video journal for Syrian women and the refugee crisis, surviving the conflict, building peace, and taking new gender roles. To start out, I think we all know that conflict situations around the world are create a lot of suffering for all genders, but there are different experiences that people have based on gender. But gender also determines the consequences that come from war. um, Even in America, we think of ourselves as superior and totally civilized, but gender ideologies still exist. And these kind of ideologies the author says that they stem from the language used by state leaders and the policies that are employed. I think we can use that relation to kind of look at Syrian women and compare and contrast. And I had known that Syria was at war, but I was kind of ignorant to the fact that it had been going on for 6 years, and I think that's an important aspect of it, because the longer that things go on and the longer that they've been happening for, the more compounding the effects become for these women. And I think that it's important that scholarly articles continue to be written about people like this, who, like Syrian women, whose suffering goes unnoticed. And it's sad reading the article knowing that I'm not reading about something that happened in the past. I'm reading about something that's those women at this very moment are still experiencing, and they really don't know if there's an end in sight. But I think that this article really helped me, because before I started taking classes on feminism and women's studies, I was one of the people who kind of just saw these women as victims and victims of war. And I think that the author helped me to realize that these Syrian women are really embodying courage right now, and they're braving the times that they're living in, and they're establishing themselves as potential peace builders, even though they're continuing to be restricted from being involved in peace organizations and peace building. Some of the gender-based specific challenges for women is, of course, gender-based violence. And there's a lot of things that goes into this, but one thing that I had never really thought of was the idea of survival sex. And this is something that women do because they have no other choice. They're really just trying to get some kind of income so that they can provide for their families and for themselves. And I think what it all comes down to is the effects that it has on these women. Not only health effects, like not having access to medical care, but really the psychological effects. And we've learned from Native Americans and African Americans how the environment that these people were in hundreds of years ago are still having prolonged effects on the newer generations that are being born. And so I just wonder how these psychological and physical effects will carry on to the next generations of Syrian women, and what that means for them. Rather than just seeing them as victims, we can kind of talk about how resilient they've been and how they still hold on to who they are and the good things about them. The author says that despite the overcrowding, because these people are trying to get out of Syria or be safe in Syria, despite that overcrowding, there are still Syrian women who are welcoming other people into their homes and just trying to take care of other people, and they're all coming together. One of the ways that Syrian women can continue to fight this is resilience through education. And it may be difficult for them to get education, but the way that it is seen in Syria is that men without education can get a lot of other jobs, but for women, education is really the only factor that will get them into some sort of job and get them some sort of income. And so I think that there needs to be programs and other things that are going to get these women into higher education. So, to negotiate peace for the country in general, I can't really speak on that. I'm sure it's a complex issue. But as far as women go, to find peace for them, we must take notes from history. They must look into history, see how it's developed, see where they think it's going to go, and use that. And there needs to be change in policy, obviously. The policy in a country or in an area is really what builds what goes on there and who suffers. Raising awareness is also a big thing, and I think that authors like the one we're talking about today do that by voicing these women's experiences, and because often it goes unnoticed and it seems so far away that Americans and other countries feel that it's not really their problem. Really, just going off of that is just continuing advocacy and really trying to make moves for these women and trying to speak up for them, trying to do things that will help them in their journey.